Hey, what's up everybody? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and I've been asked a lot about the Creative G8, so I am pleased to be talking about that today. Now, this was sent to me for review by Creative. Won't affect what I say about it, and I don't do any affiliates or kickbacks with them. I will have generic Amazon links in the description below, but purchase it wherever you feel you can trust. Hey there, me from the future, and I'm interrupting to do a too long didn't watch because this video is very much in the weeds and very technical on the G8, but I understand not everyone's going to care about that, so I wanted to make a quick clip as a highlight. So the G8, in short, it's a wonderful amp DAC. If you've just been on the fence and you need just that final confirmation, it's a great gaming DAC for both PC and PlayStation. Now, it's an upgrade over the G6. It has the same or better power across the board. It has a much improved microphone preamp, so headset microphones sound better, and a much more robust feature set thanks to the expanded I/O. So for considering inflation and all the features they added while having the same or better sonic performance across the board, it's very much worthy of the price upgrade over the G6. When you compare to something like the GC7, this has a higher output impedance, not as great for IEM use, but I did like the layout, and it does have a mic mute button, adjustable microphone gain, and some onboard bass and treble adjustments, things like that. It's not as feature rich overall, but it's comparable. It's just some different features, and it doesn't have the same audio performance. So for higher end audio, something that I think people typically have on wired setups, the G8 is an upgrade over the GC7 as well. When you look at the shit Gunnar, what you're paying for here is power. It has an obscene amount of output power in unbalanced mode, meaning that you can hook it up to any high-end headphone that requires a lot of juice in case you're using something like the Antlion Mod Mic and you just want lots of power but basic features. This doesn't have any of the expanded I/O that the G8 has, and it's more money. So if you don't need all that power, well, again, the G8 is still a viable pick. So if you needed that final nudge to either keep watching or add this to your cart, I hope this helps. It's not perfect. It has a couple of quirks with microphone side tone and just mic performance in general on PC, but overall it's really solid and I do recommend it. So let's get back to the review. Now this video is going to be a little different in terms of how it's broken up because frankly, if a gaming DAC or a headphone amp is implemented well, it should sound good, it should be relatively neutral, and then the features honestly are what make or break a product, especially in this price. So I will be comparing it to the Creative X5, I will be comparing it to the G6, the legendary G6, and of course the new shit Gunnar, which is, you know, they all have different feature parity, different price ranges. I think the G8 and the G6 are the closest to each other, and I will talk about the GC7 a little bit. I have one of those as well to hopefully help explain the differences among them. Now this is a dual USB-C DAC and it comes with dual USB-C to C cables in the box. They're a decent length, so even if you have your PlayStation on your desk or at a nearby console, you should be able to reach no problem. Otherwise, you can obviously use any cable you want because USB-C is standard. Another thing to point out is the layout is pretty classy. It like looks rather professional, and when you compare it to the GC7 is like huge and much more plasticky. So you can see a big difference on the layout there. Now, here's the thing. Because these outputs, and I do like this angle, I like the design, it feels super solid, it actually has some weight to it, which I really like, but the front outputs on it, one, this is a TRRS jack, so like this plug that says the headphone symbol also supports the microphone. So if you have a combo port that does mic and headphone, you can use that single plug. Otherwise, if your headphone breaks it out into two, well, then you can use both the dedicated headphone and mic. And when you plug that in, a little switch happens and it turns into headphone mode. The issue with this adapter or with the design of this is it puts it at an angle. And on a normal connection, you know, such as this, absolutely fine. It's not gonna, you know, bump up against the table. The problem is some headphones are 1/4 inch, and if you buy a 3.5 millimeter to 1/4 inch adapter, this is the HD800S cable. It's a rather long plug. Can you see how long that thing sticks out? Never really been an issue before on DACs for me because they've always been straight. And yeah, it points out, this guy basically turns it into a kickstand. So if you are using a 3.5 to 1/4 inch adapter, or depending how long your plug is, I just want to point that out because that's a little bit of an issue. I'd have to use a different adapter. They make flexible ones out there, so just don't get a straight barrel like what I just showed you. So I just wanted to point that out because that's what I had. Two other things I want to point out is it does not have a mute switch or a power button. So it's unfortunate that you can't mute yourself on the DAC itself because products like the GC7 had it. However, a lot of products are kind of like 50-50 on this. The products from shit like the Gunnar or the Hell 2, those didn't have mute switches either, and people have been complaining about that. So you have to rely on the mute switch on your headset. I just wanted to point that out. Also does not have a power power button, which means if you're connected to a laptop on battery, and if some laptops, if they detect that they're outputting power to charge a device via USB, well, it may not fully disable that power after a while. You'll see this light up in white because it's not RGB, it's white only here. So you'll know it's on. It also runs a little bit warm, but I just want to point that out because it could drain your battery life on your laptop. If you're connected to PC, then you're just going to see it on all the time unless you have a power management setting in your motherboard to turn that off. Now, it does have a knob I really, really like and appreciate, and this is why you get a game DAC, in my opinion, is it has game to voice. Now, this one works differently. So on the older products from Creative, such as the GC7, a single USB cable to your computer provided both the game and the voice or chat output. And then you would use one wheel for your game chat mix and the other wheel for your master volume. With the new G8, it's dual USB. You have USB 1 and 2. Now, 1 is also the powered bus. That's what makes this thing turn on. USB 2 is the voice output. That's the only thing that maps to voice. So if you are connecting dual devices to it, consider this as a mixer for that and not just exclusively for voice chat. But it's different because if you want to use this on your computer and you want voice to chat mix, then you have to connect both USB cables to the computer, and there's no way around that. Now, by default, when it first gets power, SBX turns on still. I wish it would just remember the setting, but if you're playing on PlayStation, like I was testing it on, every time I power cycled, the SBX light would light up, and I would have to turn it off if I didn't want to enable it. Now, the buttons, as far as the layout goes, you have HP speaker, that's headphone and speaker. By default, when you plug a headphone in, it just switches to headphone automatically. You hear a little click sound, and just to warn you, if you have headphones or IEMs plugged in that are very sensitive and it switches, there's kind of an aggressive relay kick or switch that happens, and it is louder than I think it should be. It's like a popping sound. I don't think that's going to be great for very sensitive IEMs personally. I don't think it'll damage your hearing, but it's definitely not a pleasant sound. Then you have the mode button. And that will basically cycle between direct mode or the standard mode that enables all the audio processing. And I found no other way to map it to do anything else. SBX mode is self-explanatory. You have off, SBX on, which is their audio engine that does all these other enhancements. And then if you press it again, it goes into scout mode, which is designed more for like FPS games and spatial awareness. Okay, so a big thing of what makes the G8 special is the connectivity in the back. Because it's loaded with different ways you can connect and use this, it has analog, optical, HDMI, and USB. So there's a lot of scenarios here, and I want to cover some more complex ones because the other one should be self-explanatory. Now, I am pleased to say that if you use the HDMI from your television's ARC HDMI port, which stands for Audio Return Channel, that's how it maintains audio like two-way communication, the TV would send audio that it receives to this device, and this device, when using it, actually will convert that to an optical out as well. So this does kind of work as an HDMI audio extractor, which is super cool. I wanted to confirm that. And on PlayStation, what you do is you basically connect both USBs to the PlayStation or just USB 2 to the PlayStation, and you can connect USB 1 to any power supply that will turn the unit on. It doesn't care if there's data on that port for this to work properly on PS5. Once you've connected the USB 2 at minimum to the PS5 and you confirm the device turns on, well, then you either choose to use HDMI's ARC connection from your television to the actual DAC, or if your TV has optical and that's easier for you to interface with, you can use optical as well. Now, there's a switch on the back for opt-in or ARC, which is, of course, HDMI. So you'll have to choose which one you have. Just make sure that you connect it to the black plug of optical in, because the gray one is optical out. That's only if you're connecting this to another amp for speakers, for example. So once you've done all that, on PlayStation, when you scroll down, you can uncheck to basically send all audio out through HDMI, and you can send voice only to headset. And if you've done that, now you have the game chat or the actual PS5 chat volume going to the USB 2 portion of the DAC, which is when you fade this over to voice, and then the HDMI or optical is handling your game audio. You don't have to do all of this to make this work. You can just use it as a normal USB DAC on PlayStation if you don't care about having game to chat mix. A single USB 2 connection or USB 1 connection, for in this case, will do everything. So if you just want one cable, use USB 1 and nothing else, and it'll still work as a normal headphone app, but you're going to lose the game to chat features. Now, the only thing I want to point out, it's just a weird operating thing, is when you use USB 2 on PlayStation, it sends the volume out a little bit lower, and you basically have to kind of fade a little bit more aggressively to voice to get it to really pick up enough audio to hear your friends. You can, when you connect USB 2 to the DAC from PlayStation, make sure that volume is maxed out for the USB DAC first before doing this whole setup. That might help get you a little bit extra volume because you want to get the most coming in from PlayStation 5. Otherwise, the volume's not too loud, and I think you lose quite a bit of overhead and game volume because of it. Now, in addition to all that, if you are using optical out or line out to go to speakers because you want to use this as a DAC for a 2-channel sound system, for example, optical out is at full volume or fixed volume, and the line out is variable. So the actual volume knob will affect how loud the output is of your line connection. So just keep that in mind depending on how you're planning on using this. Now, you could technically use this as a DAC for Xbox as well. You can use the audio return channel HDMI or the optical out from your television to the device and then use USB 1 just to power it. You will not get any chat support. It's basically just going to be a headphone app for Xbox. That's the only way to make it work. That's just because Xbox forces brands to do licensing deals to get their stuff to work on Xbox. And for companies who don't pay for that, it's just not going to be there. If they had, this price would have gone up at least $20 or $30 based off how I understand that to work. But in case you do just care about audio, you can still do that. So once you've installed your G8 and the Creative app, this is the software and what it looks like. Now, there's a few things I want to point out. If you don't see all of these features here and this is all you see, that's because it's showing you the USB 2 by default instead of your USB 1 connection. Because in this case, for this purpose of this video, I've connected both USB connections to the computer. So if you only see this, click device, click the USB 1 version, and now we have all of our features. Now, you may not need all of these features, but it's important to cover, I guess, the bulk of what they are and what they do so you can know what you're paying for. Equalizer is self-explanatory, and if I turn it on, you can customize your own. It's a standard 10-band, and it goes up to 9 decibels. So I'm going to go back down to 0. You also have a lot of different presets, so you can click on their definitions for music and dance. I always recommend custom EQ for your own model because lots of different headphones and IEMs sound different to each other. But you also have a lot of presets for games. They have one for FPS. They have one for, it's a little bit slow to switch, MOBA. Let's see if it changes. That one already happened. The Witcher series. So there's a ton of different ones you can select, but again, you can obviously make your own. And then we're going to turn this off for a moment. Now, if I go back to the home screen, you can see sound mode. It says on board. I can turn all effects off. However, if I click them here, it's a little bit different. So if I click FPS, you can see it says equalizer FPS. If I click on acoustic engine, now you see surround is also on at 25. So this little drop down is not just for EQ. It will have massive differences in audio performance on various games. And so I click on Valorant, for example. I go to acoustic engine. This time, all of these are turned off. So those are predefined by them. These aren't ones that I've created. If I turn it off, now we're back to just the EQ setting I was using earlier. Now you can customize all of this yourself and turn it on, enable surround, crystallizer. You have your speaker output in case you're using this for speakers and you want to make changes there. I am going to show you this though. So if I hit the button to switch to speakers mode, now all of these are on. If I go to playback, because speakers are activated now, you can see it says line out. Now it says speaker type, bookshelf. It also says tower and custom. And all of these, so custom is grayed out because I'm not using the bass engine. So let me go back to device. After I click done, I'm going to click on device, acoustic engine, bass is turned on, and let's set it to 28. Then I go back to playback. You can see the speaker's output. Crossover frequency. This is basically a cutoff filter for all frequencies below it. So if you have a small speaker and you're turning it up and there's just way too much bass for that speaker, it's getting overwhelmed, this is where you can define your own crossover filter, which is interesting because there's no ability to do a separate output for a sub. So you're just getting rid of all the low frequency energy in case your speaker can't handle it. And of course they have default desktops 150, bookshelf 80, and then tower is 50 hertz. So we're going to turn this back to the default of bookshelf, because when the bass engine is off, it doesn't do any filter whatsoever. Now you can even set the behavior of the optical out. You can see direct mode. If I turn this off, you can see right here, there's no audio processing happening when it's in direct mode. So it's literally a bypass from your TV out to the speakers. If I uncheck this, then it will actually start providing the changes to optical out in case you want to do more of your custom EQ for the optical output as well, not just the line out, because these are treated separately. So just keep that in mind if you need that extra customization. Again, they give you a lot there. So I'm going to hit the button back on the DAC to put it in headphone mode. And there it goes, it switches. I'm going to go back to device. Now, when I connect, this is going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but you can see this like mode button on the corner. If I hit this, actually hear it click. So now I'm in direct mode, and there it's rebooting and kind of repopulating everything. Equalizer is grayed out. Even though it says on, it's not actually on right now. Because I'm in direct mode, I've bypassed all audio processing on the DAC. This is important if you don't want to use EQ, but you just want a really high quality sound profile. Just go to direct mode. I also found that there's less latency in direct mode, not only for audio processing. I think it adds like 10 to 15 extra milliseconds based off what I've heard. But it also affects microphone side tone. We'll have this reboot. And I'm going to go into the mixer, because this is where you hear your side tone. So if you go to monitoring, this is microphone side tone right here. And if you turn this up really loud, you do hear more white noise. It's a little bit more of a hiss, but direct mode makes it so it's essentially real time. So if the delay is making you crazy, just switch to direct mode, again, bypassing your other settings. Now, another thing that you're paying for here is all of the mixing and combining of signals. So you can take the line in, the optical in, and your external mic and route that all in real time to the headphone or IAM that you're using. And that's a pretty handy feature. Again, you get individual volume control. You even have the ability to modify the volume for left and right. And that does apply on the output side as well, which is really cool. So as I turn this up, if you're hard of hearing on one side, you can quickly make some changes to that. Now, recording side, when you are selecting your device in Windows, you can merge all of these as well into the recording output of the G8, which can be helpful for streaming as well. So there's a lot of different things you can do here. The other thing I want to point out as far as the device setup goes, if you want to use this on PS5 and you want to do custom EQ, you can't solely connect it to the PS5 because there's no Bluetooth app. So what you can do, if your desk allows it, is you connect USB 1 to your computer, USB 2 to your PlayStation 5, and then either the optical or HDMI audio from your TV or monitor back to the DAC to get the PlayStation 5 game audio. If you've done all of that, then you have the ability to choose custom EQ on your computer, and that will affect the sound. It does also merge the computer audio in with optical and HDMI. So this can be a very complex device. The issue with that is when you adjust the master volume to basically adjust how loud it is on PS5 when you're gaming, that's also adjusting Windows volume. So I tried doing this so I can like listen to music in the background at a low volume on Windows and then still adjust the volume for like Call of Duty, for example. And the problem was it instantly made my background music really loud because it told Windows, I need you at 40%. So the only way to solve this was to either use like the media app's volume to turn it way down, like YouTube, drag the volume down, your music player, or you can create a virtual audio device in something like Sonar and set that master volume lower to where this can't adjust it. So there's a ton of flexibility. I just wanted to go over a few scenarios that I think are going to be common ones that people are going to ask about, but there's a lot of guides on their user manual, and hopefully this kind of helps explain what it's capable of doing from a connection standpoint. As far as some other last minute things I want to cover on the app itself, Scout mode, again, is footstep mode. That actually did work better for me than some other DACs have, so you can always experiment with it. It does make things a little louder, but there is a little bit of a delay in noise compression, so sometimes things will be louder and sometimes they aren't. It can be a little jarring, but it's very situational. So depending on the game you play, you can always experiment with it. Crystal voice is all for the microphone side. You can do noise reduction, echo removal, smart volume, voice morph if you want to change it, and equalizer. If you enable any of these, it drastically changes the frequency response of the microphone that you have. In a lot of cases, it made it sound worse to me. So unless you specifically need the noise reduction feature, I suggest leaving this off. Now, just to show you what I mean by that, this is Room EQ Wizard, and this is the Creative G8's microphone input performance. So it starts to roll off at 200 hertz, but only slight, and it's getting pretty flat or close to flat down to about 100 hertz. Everything below here, you're not going to hear a major difference on vocal performance. It's when it drops up here that it's an issue. So this is with all effects turned off. Now, if I turned on the communication preset, look at the difference in sound. Automatically, instead of getting flat microphone response all the way up to 20,000 hertz, which is fantastic, this has a great microphone preamp. Now it's cut off right about, I don't know, what is this hard point? In this case, 7,700 hertz. We'll effectively call this an 8,000 hertz or 8 kilohertz cutoff. There's a scoop in the 2K region, a nice lift in the upper bass, low mids to make it sound a little warmer, and then even more aggressive roll-off going down below 200 hertz. I'm not a fan of the communication preset. If you look at the broadcast preset, just the two compared to each other, the broadcast one actually has less of a warm bass, if you will, and then a little bit more treble. So it's kind of the opposite of what I expected based off the name. And then again, with microphone effects completely disabled versus on but flat, they measure the same. Now, if I look at, I want to show you the Creative X7 because that's an important one to compare to. And to save time, because I have a lot of different things open right now, this is the difference of the X5 microphone preamp, which is completely flat, basically down to 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. The Shit Gunnar, which is in pink, is relatively flat. When you look at the decibel roll-off below 200 hertz, you're only losing about 5 dB, which is very minimal. And just for sake of separating the lines, this isn't like a volume difference. When you look at the Creative G8, well, the roll-off is more significant. I don't think this is as bad as the measurements would make it look because that roll-off is in a frequency that most voices don't typically go down to. So you shouldn't hear a big difference here. Overall, I am still really happy with the preamp performance. So now I'm using the Creative G8 microphones preamp with the Biodynamic MMX300 Pro, which is a good mic. So I felt it'd be important to use something decent for this test. And as you can see, the crystal voice is disabled. Now there is a delay in side tone as I talk. It is a little bit distracting, but I wanted to leave it on because I want to show you and point something out. So when I click on noise reduction, this is what my voice sounds like using noise reduction. Now that I'm applying processing, the side tone is even worse. And as you can tell, I'm having a little bit of a difficult time explaining this because there's this trailing voice that's following everything I say and makes it very hard to think. So I'm going to go to mixer here and I'm going to turn off side tone. And now I can finally think because I can tell you that delay is pretty insane. Smart volume is a compressor that puts my voice in a more narrow window. It makes it kind of loud in this case, but I'm getting nervous about clipping. So I'm going to turn myself down just a little bit so I don't have too much distortion. Always do sound checks when you first set up something new because you want to make sure that you're not having clipping issues when you're talking to your friends because there's a lot of microphone preamp overhead. There's no physical knob to adjust the microphone gain. You have to do everything through Windows in this case, or if you're connected to PS5, you can adjust your mic sensitivity there. I found the default 50% was loud enough on PS5. This is with voice morph turned on, set to male. That's what it sounds like. And there's a lot of others here, but I strongly recommend trying that for yourself. I'll spare you the pain and cringe right now. Testing. So I just found out what was causing me to have microphone issues before is when I enabled or disabled certain effects here, it absolutely killed my mic on the G8. And that's why during that audio thing, it just cut off. So I'm going to unplug the DAC real quick and we're going to plug it back in. Get that volume back. So give me a second here. So now it's turning back on and now it shows the Creative X5. So I'm going to switch back. Did I plug it into USB 2? No, I'm in USB 1. There we go. And we're back. So I'm going to switch back to the microphone again, and we're going to resume this final test here. And we're back to the microphone using the G8. So microphone equalizer, I'm going to turn that on. You're going to hear the difference. This is with the microphone equalizer turned on, set to broadcast. This is with it set to balanced. Voice warmth now. Don't I sound so lovely? And let's go with voice clarity. This is voice clarity. So I'm going to turn this back off. and now I'm back to the normal no processed sound. Now, if you are using this for Dolby Audio and multi-channel processing, you can click on decoder here and set it to full or night. That will add some dynamic range compression, so the loud explosions aren't as loud compared to voices, which are often mixed at a quieter volume. Again, this really depends on your content. I already talked about scout mode. The acoustic engine is going to be somewhat self-explanatory, so the surround is a surround effect. Crystallizer really just boosts upper frequencies. Bass boosts lower frequencies. I shouldn't say just Crystallizer does just the higher frequencies. It does make it sound quite different, but I found most of the lift happen in higher frequencies, and then it also modifies the low, mid-range, upper treble as well. Smart volume, I thought this would be kind of a fun feature for FPS because that's basically a noise compression for high volumes versus low. And this can be extremely handy for FPS games. However, it reacts too slowly to be competitive. So if you fire a gun, it doesn't immediately release that clamp on the volume to where footsteps that are following it are loud enough to be heard. It actually makes everything lower for a second, and then it's like, okay, it's getting loud, quiet enough where I can slowly lift the volume back. And these delays do cause some issues with FPS gaming. This is not as much of an issue for casual play or movies, so you can always use it for that. It does react quickly at reducing volume, but slower to increase it again. Dialogue Plus is, again, a change in frequency response, and you can change how aggressive it is. So some of these it can be gimmicky. It really depends on what you're playing or listening to. This has been like a staple of creative products in the past, so it does apply towards speakers as well if you're using that, but we're obviously in headphone mode. And just for those who wanted to hear a difference, this is my voice on the Gunnar microphone preamp, which I think was one of the best ones I've heard this year for a gaming DAC. So at least you can hear the differences, if any, and make that decision yourself. So the G8, as you saw, has a few growing pains along the way. This is common with seemingly every new tech product I've covered lately. There's always like a couple things we kind of have to work through. But I'm going to give some of this a pass here because when you look at the pure audio performance, it's easily on par or even slightly better than something like the Zen DAC Air, which is about $100, and that is a headphone amp only with no mic support, no optical, no line in-out mixing, all of those. There's so many features that the G8 has, and it's not much more, and it sounds just as good, if not better in some cases, because it's a very neutral, clean-sounding DAC. So I'm happy that they kept the price within reason because the much older G6 wasn't much less than this, and it lacks a lot in features in comparison, even though it has similar sound quality. This is a good modern take on a G6. I think it was smart for them to call it the G8. It's even more confounded by the fact that when you look at the X5, which in single-ended mode, the standard 3.5, is less powerful than the G8 that is half the price. This offers unique features like Bluetooth, like I said, a better mic preamp, and some additional controls on the front. But unless you're running balance mode and you only need this for like standard headphone out for like PlayStation or PC, the G8 is actually a more compact and better value in this case. So I am pleased to see Creative going in the right direction as far as feature set and performance. To me, they're kind of back to where the expectations have always been for Creative. I've been using them for decades now, to date myself. So it's great, but just expect some growing pains and weird bugs along the way, as you saw. I don't want to hide anything. And I think and hope it will get better. If you're okay with some of the issues I pointed out, like the side tone or a couple microphone bugs, then overall it's a really solid unit. So I really hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to see you at the next one. With that being said, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.